tuned in to the Andrew Lawton Show.
So I mentioned earlier this week there was a big win in Durham, not altogether unsurprising, as I said, and I put the caveat there because it has been a conservative stronghold for 20 years. But the margin of victory by which the conservative candidate, Jamil Jivani, won was actually quite strong. And I think there is a message in this to Justin Trudeau, either that conservatives are in fact looking beyond, or conservative voters in general are looking beyond all those evil, scary conservative Trump comparisons, and also that the Liberal vote is just not motivated to show up. People that voted for Justin Trudeau in the last 3 elections, and especially the last 1 election, are just not motivated to show up and do it again. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I'd rather focus on the guy himself. We've had him on the show in the past on a number of occasions in a number of different capacities, both as a broadcaster, as president of the Canada Strong and Free Network, and now as the MP-elect for Durham. Jamil Jivani, good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on, and congratulations.
Thank you, Andrew. It's always good to chat with you. And being called an MP is still something I got to get used to. So,
well, MP-elect. I don't want to jump the gun too much formality. Do you know when you are going to be sworn in?
I don't know yet. No. So Elections Canada still has to go through their process of ratification and stuff. So once that's done, that's when we can schedule the swearing in. So we're sort of in their hands for the moment, but it'll be soon.
It must be very exciting. I know you've gone through in the last few years a lot of change. I mean, you've had to deal with cancer. You obviously got fired from Bell. You turned around and tried to, and I think successfully, stick it to Bell with a lawsuit. You've taken over the Canada Strong and Free Network for a time. Like, how do you begin to sort of decide what to do now when you get to Ottawa?
Well, I mean, the good thing about this job is that we were elected to accomplish the goals that we set out. So that's what I think our focus is. You know, it was a 12-word promise that we made many, many times during the campaign, which is axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime. That is the agenda. And certainly at this point, where our job is to hold the current government to account, we want to focus as much as we can on pushing for ideas that we think are going to help accomplish those objectives. And also for me locally, here in Durham, to make sure that I'm a good, strong voice for the issues that people care about. We knocked on over 111,000 doors in the last few months. And so I've talked to as many of our voters as possible, as many of our community members as possible. And I think I have a sense of what they want from me as the MP. And that's what I'm out here to do.
One of the questions that always comes up in politics is how much of a candidate's performance is them and how much is the leader. And you can never quantify it, but I'm curious if you got a sense when you were out knocking on doors, how Pierre Poilievre is perceived, or if he's even perceived by people. Because obviously there's been a bit of a change. This riding was formerly represented by Erin O'Toole, who was the previous Conservative leader. We get from the media no shortage of claims about, Pierre Poilievre being the big, evil, scary Conservative meanie. How was that actually on the ground when you were talking to voters?
Well, I think people are very happy with what they've seen from, Pierre Poilievre up till this point. Since he became leader of the party, I think a lot of folks unhappy with our current government and unhappy with our current economy in particular see Pierre as the change leader. That if you want something other than Trudeau, if you want an economy that, as we say, works for those who do the work, that is actually responsive to the needs of middle class and working class families, that Pierre is the guy to make that change happen. So on the ground, a lot of support for Pierre, a growing amount of support as people get to know him better. And the reality is that, the reason we won by the big margin that we did, the biggest margin in the 20-year history of the Conservative Party of Canada in Durham, was won by us on Monday. And I think that is because, Pierre Poilievre has become a symbol of change for people. So we drew support from neighborhoods that Conservative Party candidates in the past may not have been able to get as much support from, because we are now seen as the change party. So that's a very exciting thing for us, nationally, but also locally. It's very exciting because I think people have expectations for us that we're going to deliver. And now it's on us to actually hold up our end of the deal.
You made some waves on Monday night when you took aim at liberal elites, which I played the clip on the show, and I think the audience was very much on your side on that one. But I was curious in who you included in that, because you weren't just talking about the capital L Liberal Party led by Justin Trudeau. You talked about telecom companies. You even talked about, I mean, what I read as the Ontario PC government. Did you not?
Well, I specifically mentioned the Ontario Ministry of Education because, the facts just bear it out. They have upheld a policy agenda that is very similar to what you might have seen with a Liberal government in power. They have focused on a lot of virtue signaling. They have focused on race politics. Meanwhile, the average student in Ontario is still struggling with math, with reading, with writing. They have tried very hard to do, in my view, superficial things, while the effects of pandemic school closures are still being felt by middle class and working class families. My job as an MP is to care about what people in Durham care about. And I'm knocking on doors, I'm talking to parents every day, I'm talking to students every day, and they're telling me the school system isn't working for us. So I feel it's important to tell the truth. And when I say liberal elite, you're absolutely right, Andrew. I'm not just talking about people who are in one political party. A lot of our voters were former liberal voters, and I don't hold them in contempt because I grew up in a community where I was taught the Liberal Party is where you belong. And it took me a while to figure out that that wasn't true. And it might take others a while to figure out that out too. So I don't hold that against people. But when I talk about liberal elites, I'm talking about the people who have abandoned the middle class and the working class. And as I said, whether they're big bank CEOs, big telecom CEOs, the Ministry of Education, the activists and academics pushing for anti-law enforcement, anti-public safety policies, what all of these folks have in common is that they are serving a privileged few while turning their backs on the majority of people in this country. And I got to tell the truth about that. And if it ruffles feathers and it makes people unhappy, get used to it, because my job is to work for the people of Durham. My job is not to worry about offending people in the halls of power who are actually making everybody's life harder.
One of the things you and I have spoken about this in the past, and I know you've spoken about it in speeches. When you were at Bell as a radio host, there was kind of an expectation that was put on you that because you fit a certain demographic mold, you would fit an ideological mold as well. And I know that was one of the things you took aim at when you spoke out against them. And I can't help but notice that the narrative around you and your candidacy would be different if you had a different political view. Like I'm convinced, and you may disagree with me, Jamil, that if you were a liberal, you would be getting like the New York Times style profile of, this bootstrap guy that got himself into Yale and is now trying to change the country. But just to give you one headline from the Globe and Mail, Jamil Jivani will fit right in with activist populist conservatism of Poilievre. So you just basically get distilled down into this. And I'm curious what you think of the media's take on you. I mean, did they really cover you, and did they cover you fairly?
Well, I do not expect fairness from the media. It's a lesson I learned even before I worked in it, but certainly when working in it and just seeing all the pressure put on employees by these big media corporations to serve a certain agenda. It's not easy to be fair in the media. You do have to sometimes put your career on the line because you've got management who doesn't want you to be fair and doesn't want you to be impartial and objective. So I don't expect it to be fair. The truth is this: if you want to make a difference in this country right now, you have to fight for the middle class. You have to fight for the working class. You got to fight for the people who are not represented in the media. They don't work in the media. By virtue of the type of training and education and lifestyle that the media rewards, the voices of the middle class and the working class are often not in these organizations, whether it's a radio station or a TV station. And there are exceptions to that, but by and large, it's just not the case. So just look at the polls. In every poll that comes out, Pierre Poilievre is at the top of the list because many, many Canadians, a growing number, want change. But you don't see that reflected in news coverage because they're out of touch. And our job is not to be beholden to out of touch media organizations. They can call me names. When Justin Trudeau was calling me names and a twofer and all that nonsense, most of these media organizations didn't cover that either. They're not interested in providing an objective view of what's happening. They have their own values. They have their own agenda. When I say liberal elites, I am talking about the companies that own many of the media outlets that Canadians rely on for information. So this is why I'm always keen to do independent media like True North, to do local media like we have here in Durham. We've got, still a number of newspapers, TV stations, radio stations, because this is where you get a more accurate sense of what's going on in the country. And I'll tell you now, as the MP elect for Durham, that is wisdom I take into my new job. I will not be someone who's going to get pushed around by journalists who think if they give me bad coverage, I'm going to change my values. I was elected because of my values, and I will continue to stand for them.
Let me just ask you about where you have to direct your attention now, because, unlike anyone who gets elected in a general election and has, 2, 3, 4 years of breathing room, you're being elected in a by-election, which means you could theoretically find yourself campaigning in like a month's time. It looks like it's probably going to be about a year and a half until the next election. But what pressure does that put on you to, perform as an MP, to navigate this new life, this new world, like, figuring out everything from where the bathrooms are on Parliament Hill to, how you can get a bill passed, and then have to turn around and do it again?
Yeah, well, it's one thing that a lot of people might not know is that getting elected to Parliament, there are things you have to do just like with any other job. There's orientation, and there's the tech guy who has to explain how you use your phone and log into your new email address. So there's a lot of those steps that I'm just figuring out now and trying to learn, how it all works as quickly as I can. But the truth is that the fact that an election or general election could be coming so quickly is, this is exactly why we have to stay close to our people, close to our voters, close to the community, because I'm not going to be surprised. I want to know what people want from their MP every step of the way. I'm not going to be one of those politicians who just comes and knocks on your door every few years. I want to be someone who the public feels this guy has our back. He's there to do a job. He works just as hard as we do, and we can trust him to speak for us. So that's the mentality I come into the job with. And that's why I have the confidence I have that, we can take positions that the media might not like. We can stand for things that the Liberals are going to attack us on. They can throw all their darts and all their stones all they want. And I'm fine to take it, because I really believe I have a sense of what people want, what the majority of people in our community here want. And that's what I'm trying to be accountable to.
Is there like a bucket list thing that you'd love to achieve in your first? I don't even want to call it a first term, because it's like a partial term. But is there's something that you want to be able to get to the end of the next 12, 18 months and be able to say, I've done this, when you go to campaign for re-election?
Yeah, well, I guess there's two things I have in mind. One is, I think nuclear energy is a really, really important part of the future of Canada. We've been sort of sold this idea that, free market economics and the climate have to be at odds with each other. That has opened the gates to a lot of bad policies like the carbon tax. I don't support any of that. I mean, obviously, we campaign on axing the carbon tax all the time. But we do have, lower emission options that will grow the economy, especially for us here in Ontario. And in my area in particular, there are over 3,000 people who are employed by our local nuclear plant. So I think nuclear energy is a really big part of the future, and I want to do my part as an MP to push for that and get us away from this sort of anti, free market, anti-economic growth approach that the Liberals have taken. And the other issue is I want to draw attention to some of the challenges facing boys and young men in our society. Andrew, I commend you a great deal because you've been open with some of the challenges you faced as a man. Mental health is one of the biggest things that are going on, that are happening with boys and young men. We often don't talk about it. Often there aren't services available to a lot of us. And I think we need to make sure that the funding that goes out to programming in our communities is accounting for the fact that the vast majority of people who are committing suicide, the vast majority of people who are dying from overdoses, these are men. And I think that their stories need to be told and heard. And I know a lot of moms and grandmas who are expecting me to stand up for their sons and their grandsons. So that's a big part of what I'd like to accomplish early on in this part of my journey as well.
Well, and I'm glad. Yeah, you did tremendous work as an author on that file, and I hope you pick that up as a member of Parliament. And obviously, I'm available if you need anything. But you've got that you seem to have that well handled, and I look forward to hearing what you do with that. So, MP elect for Durham, Jamil Jivani. It's great to talk to you, and congratulations again.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And I'm very happy for your continued success. And I'm a big fan of the show, so always happy to be here.
Oh, it's a good thing you didn't say that before the election. You never would have won with an endorsement like that. Thanks a lot, Jamil.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.